Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host SM Hali, presenting the program Defense and Diplomacy. Last Sunday's coordinated attack on Kabul, Nangarhar, Logar and a few other places in Afghanistan was not only deadly but declared the commencement of the spring offensive. What are its caveats and what are its implications? That we will discuss in the program today. But unfortunately, some blame game has come Pakistan's way also. The Defense Committee of the Cabinet on Defense has met and discussed the re-engagement process with the United States. This and among other topics will be discussed today with Major Raja Mujtaba, who is a renowned defense analyst, and we also have with us Professor Salma Malik, who is not a new face to this particular program. Welcome, Salma.
Thank you so much.
Major Saab, what are the caveats of this attack in Kabul, which took place last Sunday?
This attack was expected for many reasons, Number one, it was spring, the snows had melted, and then more or less every year this sort of pattern, it builds up, and they launch their offensives and settle their scores.
No, but allow me, sir, if you say if it was expected, then how was complete surprise achieved? Because Kabul is a heavily garrisoned city, and to attack
coming to that,
for 18 hours.
Yeah, now coming to that, how a surprise was achieved. Americans had thought probably by engaging into talks, they will put it off. But they have also forgotten that no matter what may happen, the Afghans will never accept any foreign foot on their soil. They will use all their means to throw them out, talks or no talks. And so from that point of view, I was not surprised when this thing happened. And if Americans are surprised, let them be surprised.
But Hamid Karzai has called it an intelligence failure.
So it is their failure. It is their failure.
But he calls it the failure of the NATO.
Okay. No, he has nothing else at his disposal except for NATO, because he himself is bound to the NATO. And then it's not only that. Immediately once this attack was launched simultaneously on so many places, they shifted the blame onto Pakistan. In spite of the fact that the Taliban claimed that we have done it. They claimed it the full responsibility that
in fact, while the attack was in progress, Sabiullah Masood, the spokesperson for the Taliban,
yes,
contacted AP, and he said that they had been preparing 2 months for this particular offensive.
So they claimed it, and in spite of that, they transferred the blame onto Pakistan, and then they brought in Haqqani. The Haqqani network is doing this and that.
So if you permit, we'll come back to the blame game in a moment. I need to solicit the opinion of Professor Salma.
I agree with Major Mujtaba to an extent, but you see, the issue is that despite the fact that this seasonal pattern that the Taliban may be following, but the very fact is that for the entire Kabul city, if you look at the security map of the place, American embassy, the parliament, all of these are the highly fortified and extremely secured, more than secured areas with eyes in the sky and all of those things very much there. So pure and outright, it was an intelligence failure. Despite the fact that they may have something in their archives that every spring such a thing may happen, one has to look into the pattern that the Taliban, there might be certain factions amongst the Taliban who may be willing to negotiate, but then there's also a certain faction who is not willing to do that. They're testing the waters. At the same time, it also provides the US-led ISAF forces with a pretext to prolong their military footstep in this area. So it can be looked at it can be actually looked at from various dimensions and angles. One good thing that one could see that was a footnote to this entire episode was that the Afghan National Army, they responded, and they somewhat were allowed to take a lead in the counter-offensive, and they achieved minor markers, which is being considered to be a big thing for them, because a major issue that comes up time and again is that once the Americans leave, what will happen to Afghan security? The indigenous forces are not strong enough. So here they were allowed to do that. However, the very fact is that they are very much spineless, or they don't have that necessary backbone unless and until the NATO intelligence as well as the military fortification really helps the ANA. So those 2-3 factors really need to be looked into. At the same time, the blame game will always come on Pakistan. But we also have to see that very much attached to that was also the Bannu jailbreak, in which
in fact it happened on the same day, just a couple of hours earlier.
So I mean, definitely I don't want to link these two things up, but then there is also some linkage to this, that in two neighboring areas this thing is taking place, and why is it happening at the same time? So one really has to look into
the important thing, Salma, is that in Bannu we are at the receiving end. 381 prisoners, out of which some of them are hardened terrorists. They escape.
Agreed.
In a very daring jailbreak.
Agreed.
So we are at the receiving end.
That too is an intelligence failure. I mean, why were we not anticipating keeping such high risk targets in that jail? And we had no contingency planning as such. We had no idea that anything can take place. You know, you have to really, you people have been in the military, you know that you plan and you counter plan and you think like the terrorist and you think like a militant, and then you plan your contingency plannings. Those things had not really been there. But unfortunately, Pakistan has been at the receiving end on both ends, from our side as well as from Kabul or NATO or the ISAF.
In fact, that is the salt in the wound.
Precisely.
Coming back to your opinion, sir, I would like to draw your attention first to an article by Hali. The United States and the train wreck in Afghanistan. He thinks that the Obama administration is heading for a train wreck, and he gives out a number of reasons for it. And most important in these are the drone attacks which are persisting. Number two, the night raids which are continuing, and that's something like 20,000 per year. And then he also talks about the US overtures towards India ignoring Pakistan, even including giving India the nuclear what you call energy package or whatever it is. So all these, he says, need to be corrected, otherwise the US is headed for a train wreck.
I would agree with what he is saying. And as Salma just now said that the ANA was given the role to play in this repulsing this attack. They were given the role, but let me tell you that ANA has been penetrated by the Taliban. So ANA is not totally under the control of Afghan military or Afghan government or anything like that, because a sizable penetration in ANA has taken place. Most of the weapons that the Taliban now use, in fact, they are siphoned out of ANA, which go to their hands, you know. And that sort of a thing is coming on. So it is becoming a quagmire between a quagmire, and they will find no way out. The only way out is that America must recognize the regional responsibilities of Pakistan. The role that Pakistan has to play is its natural role, and America must assign that role to Pakistan. Unless that respect and role is assigned to Pakistan, America will not be able to make any headway out of it. And coming back again, Pakistan is one country with Afghanistan with which they have a very, very long common history. At times they were just one people and one country. And again, the last 30 years, now more than 30 years now, over 3 million, rather 5 million Afghan refugees having lived in Pakistan for so long. Still there are a lot of Afghan refugees living in Pakistan. So the interaction between Pakistan and Afghanistan has gone beyond to such a level where it cannot be broken off now. And it is people to people, whether Karzai sitting there likes Pakistan or doesn't like Pakistan, whether America wants some role in Afghanistan for Pakistan or doesn't want, but the people of Afghanistan, they want that role, and that role will come. Earlier, the Americans, they recognized this role, that there is a role for Pakistan, and America should not superimpose India in Afghanistan at the cost of Pakistan. If it does that, let me complete this. If America does that, even post withdrawal scenario will be very, very bloody, because then there will be another sort of clash, because Afghans will not like even the Indians to be on their soil, you know.
Right. So Salma, let's come to the other aspect of our discussion, that is the meeting of the Defense Committee of the Cabinet, in which the recommendations which were made to the Parliament by the parliamentary National Security Committee were more or less endorsed. And obviously, this is the aspiration of the people of Pakistan.
True.
But the terms of re-engagement are now, although they are clear from our side, but we need to negotiate them with the US, because one of the things is they are insisting upon continuing with the drone attacks. What is your opinion?
You see, the issue here with Americans primarily is we can come up with any number of parliamentary recommendations and committee minutes and all those things, which is very right, which should be there. However, the fact is that there are two-way war that we are fighting. One, of course, is the drone thing. The other thing that the Americans try to use as a pressure tactic against Pakistan, and that's actually a very cheap pressure tactic, is the Balochistan card. And you see, if they let up on the drone thing, which they're not going to do, they're too heady in their calculations, and that, I'm sorry, I'm taking a longer route in replying to this, that actually leads back to the fact that initially when Pakistan kept on pressing America to negotiate with the Taliban, the good and the bad Taliban analogy that was brought up, for the Americans, Taliban were a no-go area. And today the same Americans are negotiating with the good Taliban and not with the bad Taliban. So the bad Taliban attack the embassies, the good Taliban sit in Qatar and enjoy at their expense. Whereas people like Mullah Zaif, who were always on the moderate side, they have been persecuted, now they're being harassed, and moderates are turning into hardliners, rather that they should turn hardliners into moderates. So you see, the fact is that there's such a policy deficit in the entire American administration calculation that Obama's administration, despite trying to play up to the gallery that we are going to do this in Afghanistan once we are in power and we are going to do that, they have actually just continued with the cowboy and Texan philosophy of what George Bush was pursuing.
When you talk about the cowboy and Texan policy of George Bush, please remember that in the 8 years of the presidentship of George W. Bush, only 41 drone attacks took place.
Agreed.
Whereas in the Obama administration, it is 243 or something like that to date.
But you see, it's just the name of, it's just a change in the administration. The people who were on the fence at that side, now they're actually heading the main game. The CIA as well as the Defense Department and all, the people who are heading them are the ones who are calling the shots, and they're the architects of such policies. So now they have a free hand in doing what they are. They think that drone attacks are a very clear-cut surgical thing. They're going to continue with it. For them, the Pakistani collateral doesn't really matter. And that is what they're really erring at. They don't realize that tomorrow this thing is not really going to work and the train wreckage is going to become pretty messy. The second card that they have started to use, and which is far more precarious for Pakistan's security, is the Balochistan card. It's not for the love of the Balochi national or ethnic Balochi that they are doing all those legislations in the hearings. They're doing it just because they want to pressurize the state of Pakistan. And the state of Pakistan can be anything.
You can poke holes in this particular, what you call logic straight away, that President Obama is on record that in his pre-presidential elections campaign, he said that he's going to resolve the Kashmir issue, or at least help resolve the Kashmir issue. But he forgot that the moment he...
election sloganeering, I mean, those things are never going to work. And whenever it comes to that India versus Pakistan thing, they require India to counter China and this. So the grand chess game that they're playing at this time, it's just a delaying tactic, and a lot depends on what happens once the elections take place in Afghanistan as well as in America. And that happens, and then we're actually going to see a much more drastic change in the policy than otherwise. Coming back to where our recommendations and those things work, it's entirely up to the US how they take it. They may negotiate, they may try to talk us into having the supply chains and all of those things. They may want to have alternate routes, but those alternate routes are not without a massive price tag as well as resource tag that is attached to this. So they are going to negotiate with Pakistan. They're going to allow us certain concessions. However, given the past 2 years track record of how this administration has worked, the American administration has worked, I really don't have too much hopes in how they're going to respond to Pakistani recommendations.
Let me revisit it a little later. Major Mujtaba, she talked about the recommendations of the Defense Committee of the Cabinet as well as the Parliament. But the important things, the two aspects which she highlighted was the drone attacks as well as the resumption of the NATO supply route. And it is the NATO supply route, the cessation of it, which is really pinching NATO as well as the US. So what do you think will happen?
You see, I am of the opinion that supplies sooner or later will have to be resumed, because we cannot keep them blocked for a very long time. If you do that, you will pay a very, very heavy price, and that is not good. And either we should not have allowed them this facility right at the beginning to start with. Having given that concession, not to totally block it out is not feasible, it's not advisable. So we have to gradually pull out of it and then take time on getting out of it. Now, as we have been saying, now the DCC and even the Parliament has said that no lethal weapons should be allowed to this resumption of supplies. It will be only for their food and things like that, you know. Non-lethal equipment will go there. So this is the first step. And then secondly, now when the containers that land at Karachi and then they put onto the trucks or the trains, whatever it is, these must be inspected at Karachi before they're being allowed to go in. And then there should be no FBI and there should be no CIA trying to secure things like that. It should be totally responsibility of Pakistan. Allowing CIA, allowing FBI to take the care of that thing, you are giving them more leverage to play into your interior, and that is going to hurt you in the long run. So we should not allow any of the American agencies to take care of the things. It should be responsibility of the Pakistanis, and Pakistan must charge them the commercial fee, whatever they have to charge. Maybe about $10,000 per container, something like that, you know. On the Indian, they're paying much more than that, and it's very expensive and long route they're taking. This is the shortest and the quickest and also the cheapest. So
and it has a lot of restrictions too.
True. And so this will be the best thing for Pakistan to do, and Pakistan must assert itself. And for the drone attacks, any drone attack coming onto Pakistan, that is the attack on the sovereignty of Pakistan, and then we must respond accordingly. The first thing that we can again do is, if after the resumption, if the drone attacks do not cease, block the supplies again, because then that will be a violation. And since now they are going to do this, all these agreements in writing, so every full stop and comma must be defined in that document. Nothing should be left vague. Nothing should be left open to the, okay, we sent that, talking, we discussed this, and we talked that, so we are doing it. No. All those discussions and the points and the agreements must be formulated in paper form and signed and strictly adhered to. And other thing is that through this, Pakistan once for all should withdraw itself from so-called war on terror, because it is ultimately hurting Pakistan, and that is what their intention, desires are, to implicate us, to involve us more and more into internal things, thin out our army. See what is happening in Quetta, what is happening in Gilgit, what is happening in Karachi, and then simultaneously the voice comes, we need army over here. Why do we need army over there? Because we are already committed in Fatah and Swat area, everything. Wherever army has gone once, the local administration does not free the army to come back to its own barracks, you know. So if the army goes to Quetta, army goes to Karachi, army goes to Gilgit, you further stretch it thin, you know. And then that will make it open for the Americans, because they have the intention of attacking or doing some problem in Balochistan. So they want to contain the army, engage the army internally someplace, so that they have a free hand in tackling Balochistan. You know.
So Professor Salma, you're a student of strategy and you teach the same subject too. They are talking about the end game in Afghanistan. And obviously, as both of you have pointed out, it is imperative for Pakistan to have a peaceful neighborhood. In fact, we are a stakeholder. But we keep hearing talks about a premature conclusion of the withdrawal of the armed forces of the USA. Australia has already declared that by next year it's going to withdraw its forces. But on the other hand, you keep hearing voices like Senator McCain only the other day said that no, we should not withdraw the US forces and they should continue. And America wants to withhold its strategic forces, its special security forces in Afghanistan. So there is a what you call a dichotomy in all these statements.
Very true. I'll just point out one thing Major Mujtaba had talked about previously, the ANA and Taliban penetration. When the ANA was being created, National Forces as well as the police wing, what basically had been done was that the warlords who had their strong militias, they were just provided uniforms, and overnight after a fast-track military training, they were given these uniforms and they were made the military people. So illegitimate actors became legitimate actors. Now when that happens and this fast-track thing takes place, what primarily results in is, A, they leave the military. When they find something more lucrative, they sell their weapons, they disappear. And then they reappear in another province and go through that cycle all over again. And this is a pattern that you have been seeing happening all over Afghanistan. So that is where, I mean, the Taliban and the non-Talibans and anyone and everyone has been doing that. So one factor is there. So the security, indigenous security framework of Afghanistan will remain very shaky if we take the 2014 timeline seriously, that there's going to be a complete withdrawal. Hypothetically, that's not possible. Number one, America has invested a lot in terms of physical infrastructure in Afghanistan. They have built up their bases, they have established their links. It's not only Afghanistan they're looking at the entire region. And the region requires a lot of American presence. There are also those energy corridors that they have to look forward to. There are a lot of other things. And they will, if they do not find a legitimate excuse today, tomorrow, day after, they will have some legitimate reason of staying there. Okay, hypothetically speaking, if the president is not re-elected, if the Americans have to take a decision of going back to their country, it's not going to be 100% withdrawal. There's going to be some minimal military presence left in Afghanistan, along with a horde of military contractors who will definitely remain there to do the work in another fashion. So it's just going to be a change in nomenclature, it's just going to be a change in uniform, from uniform to series. That's it. It's not going to be anything different. And that is actually going to be far more lethal, because you expect something by the book from a uniformed man, but you don't expect the same terms of engagement and SOPs from a military contractor. And we have seen how the military contractors de-shaped the entire Iraq campaign and how they have affected, Raymond Davis being one of those contractors.
And the moral trepidations that they have
Those
incurred.
factors are there.
Okay.
So that's going to become a messier game all the more.
Right. So viewers, with that we come to the end of this very intense debate, and this could go on and on, but due to paucity of time, we have to conclude over here. The important thing is that both of our participants have brought out that the end game, though may apparently be near, but the chimera is that the US interest in the region will dictate that it continues its presence in one form or the other, whether they are private contractors or defense contractors in some form. But we, as the Pakistani neighbors of Afghanistan, who have a stake in this particular region and in the peace of the region, need to have our act together. It is very heartening that the Defense Committee of the Cabinet as well as the Parliament are on the same page, but we need to assert what are Pakistan's sovereign rights. I would like to thank you, Major Mujtaba and Professor Salma, for your very cogent comments. And viewers, keep watching us and hope to see you next week, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.